Hey guys, happy Wednesday. It is Wednesday for those of you who have lost track of the days, which is really easy to do now. So it is time for our devotional. As most of you know, over the last couple of weeks, we have been looking at the Gospel of Matthew, and we are still doing that. We have finally made it to chapter 4. The Gospel of Matthew is just so jam-packed full of really awesome things to discuss that we really we've been doing this for a couple weeks and we're only on chapter 4, but that's okay. We're gonna take our time and we're gonna get through the whole book maybe. There are 28 chapters, so we'll see. I am not going to read the entire chapter to you guys today because I feel like we would just lose a lot of focus with that. So I am picking one part of chapter 4 that we're going to dive into on this recording. And if you want to actually dive into the entire chapter, which is really interesting, I invite you to join me on Zoom for our live Bible study tonight. Middle schoolers are 4:30 and high schoolers are 7:30. And if you want to do that, please find my email on our website, Holy Innocents website, and email me and I will send you the Zoom info. But for this recording, we're just going to dive into, like I said, one little part. Now, to give you a refresher before we dive in, the audience of the Gospel of Matthew, the people that Matthew is writing this Gospel for, are brand new Christians. They have just left the synagogue, like literally just walked out of the synagogue, walked out on their friends and family and people they've grown up with forever and their faith, and now they are following Christ. And so they're brand new Christians, and they're having a rough go of it. They're struggling with identity, and they just are maybe a little bit confused and feeling very out of their element. And so that is the audience that Matthew is writing to. Let me think, any other refreshers that are important for what we're going over? I don't think so. So we're just going to dive right in. Today we are going to look at chapter 4, verse 18 through 22. And this is the call of the first disciples. We are actually going to focus on the disciples today. And I'm just going to read this section and then tell you a little bit about the disciples so that we have a clear idea of who they are and kind of what they're going through as we continue to explore the Gospel of Matthew. So here we go. This is 18 through 22. As he walked by the Sea of Galilee, here we're talking about Jesus. As he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. As he went from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left their boat and their father and followed him. Okay, so right off the bat, we can see that these disciples are very easily persuaded to leave. It's kind of weird. Also, their father Zebedee, two of these guys, their father Zebedee does not do anything when his two sons decide to go off and follow this random guy. So it's kind of weird. So I want to explore that a little bit because this whole section is just kind of like, wait, what just happened? They just left everything for this dude and walked off? That's weird. So right off the bat, I will tell you that these guys, when I say guys, I'm referring to the disciples. These disciples are teenage boys. Don't forget, they are teenagers. They're not adults, they're teenagers, who are supporting their family by supplying the fishing quotas that they have contracted with Rome. So, easily put, they're fishermen. That immediately tells us a few things about these teenagers, and I will explain that. So, in Galilee, where we are, education was really, really important. It was like a really big thing. And when I say education, I'm not talking about science or math or anything like that. I am talking about religious education. So the study of the Old Testament, the study of the scripture and the text. That was really, really big in Galilee for Jewish boys and girls. So let's think of it in terms of our time, our society. It's weird nowadays if you're not in an AP class. Like, people judge you and they're like, oh, you're not in an AP class? Like, you're not very smart. That's the kind of level we're talking about with Galilee. Everybody wanted the highest level of education possible. And if you weren't getting that, you were kind of looked down on. So that's kind of the educational, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but that's where we're at with Galilee and Jewish boys and girls. So the highest level of education that you could get was after secondary school to receive permission to go and study with a famous rabbi. And rabbi is a fancy term for teacher. You would get permission to leave your home and leave everything behind for a long period of time and follow a rabbi or a teacher around and learn from him. And that was the highest thing that you could possibly do in the educational world in Galilee. That was the creme de la creme. I think that's how they say it. So we see here that our disciples, our little teenage boys, have not done that, obviously. They failed out of the educational system in Galilee and took on their family's trade of fishing. So here we have the disciples who have not made it in the educational world. And so they're not, they have experienced that feeling of failure. Let's say that. So that being said, now we can look at this text and say, oh, okay, so it wasn't so strange for boys to just leave everything behind and go and follow a rabbi. So now it doesn't seem like it's super, super weird that the father Zebedee didn't stop his two sons. This is actually really exciting for that family. This is really exciting for all four of these teenage boys. They're like, oh my gosh, we made it. Yes, we're going to go study with a rabbi. This is awesome. Little do they know who this rabbi is, but we'll get to that later. So this is really exciting for them, and that's why they can immediately, it says immediately twice in this text, by the way, that's why they immediately get up and follow the rabbi. Just one other thing I want to point out is that to be a fisherman was a really good thing for Jesus. Let's go over that really quickly. If you have not fished before, the first thing that you will come to realize when you try to fish is that you have to have a lot of patience. Like a lot of patience. You have to be still and you have to be quiet, which I'm really bad at. And you have to have a lot of patience, which I also don't have, by the way. So that right off the bat is a really good trait for Jesus. That kind of goes hand in hand with what Jesus is trying to teach, right? And then fishermen also have to have great determination and instinct and willingness to learn. All of these things work really, really well for Jesus. So even though these guys kind of failed out of their community, they're seen as like these failures, Jesus sees them as great opportunities. And that is a really cool connection for our audience that Matthew is writing to here. Our audience has not failed out of the community. They didn't fail out of the educational system. However, they did leave it. They left the synagogue by choice, and now they are not liked. So they can relate hardcore to the disciples right now, to these teenage boys who failed out of the system, but now they're getting to follow this rabbi. And so our community here, Matthew's church, that's the phrase that I like to use when I refer to the people that Matthew wrote this text for, can really follow along really well with the disciples at this point, which is a really cool tie-in for them, and it might be a little bit comforting for them. Jesus just sees these guys as a great opportunity, and it's very comforting, I think, for the audience, because they probably now feel like, oh, maybe, this is okay because I can have this great opportunity with Christ and follow Christ, if that makes any sense. So that is a quick little introduction to our disciples. And if you, again, want to dive into chapter 4 a little bit more, please email me so that I can give you the Zoom info for tonight for our Bible study. But that is all I'm going to share with you today. I hope you guys learned a little something, and I hope you have a great rest of your day and rest of your week. And hopefully I will see you back on Sunday for our Sunday school lesson. See you then. Bye, guys.